All right, we're back. We are rounding out our interviews at a stablecoin conference in Mexico City. We're joined by Dimitri, president, correct, at Modern Treasury. You've kind of hit our conference circuit. Last time we talked to you was at very stable conference. I think just two kind of in my head like premier conferences. Maybe I'm a little biased since we've been out of both of them. But Dimitri, I mean, thanks for coming back. How's the sentiment? Maybe. How was it at AVSC and how's it been in Mexico City?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I couldn't agree more. I was here at this conference last year, which was the first time they had BITS organize this conference for the first time. It was a bit of an experiment.
Yeah.
I think that the LATAM corridor is so important for U.S. companies that even for the U.S. side of the house, I think there's a lot of some of the best companies were here and present and focused on this market. So.
Stable Dash Live is sponsored by Agora, built for global institutions moving money at the speed of the internet. You can learn more at agora.finance.
You see here, where to say, building LATAM connections. Do you think prior to this conference that it was hard if maybe you were going to the more digital asset oriented ones in the state to meet Latin American builders?
Yeah, I think that fundamentally, when you're in Silicon Valley, when you're in San Francisco, you're thinking about technology. And when you go to events there, I think the feel and the focus is really around what can technology do? How can it work? You hear a lot of talk about it, agentic commerce and different types of chains. And it's very, very technical. It's not trying to be. And I think when you get out of the US, you really feel the power of stablecoins and the draw of dollarization, which, doesn't really mean anything in the US. Where we live in dollars, but in a lot of these economies outside of the U.S. that have inflation, have historically had all sorts of problems in their banking sectors and so on, the ability to be able to just operate in U.S. denominated coins is such a powerful thing. And I just don't think that so when you talk to people here, of course it's, it is a technology thing and that comes up, but by and large, that's not the focus. It's a little bit more focused on real business or consumer use cases that are sort of day-to-day things that people have problems with.
Yeah. I mean, we were just talking a little bit about those use cases, and I think you sit in an interesting position. We were talking about this, like some of these companies have started as very crypto native, stablecoin payments, fiat payments have been integrated. You guys started kind of on the other end. You had a product launch when we talked with you last at a very stable conference. So kind of catch us up on what's happened since then.
Yeah, so just to catch you up, for those of you who are not familiar with Modern Treasury, we started in 2018, really focused on software and building software for money movement, for fiat money movement. So we helped companies, integrated banks, send payments, ledger those payments, reconcile them, be able to report on them, all those things that technology and finance and ops teams need to do when they're moving money at large scale. And when we last spoke, we had just launched our PSP, which was basically us stepping forward and saying, we're actually going to step into the flow of funds, help you with compliance, help you with the bank integration. We're going to provide all the payments needs that you have so you can be a one-stop shop. And we offer both versions. There's large corporates that are using us to connect to a number of banks that they already work with. And there's, a lot of times startups or companies that are starting with stable coins, they don't have deep bank integrations and deep bank relationships, and they just want to get started as quickly as possible. So that PSP product launched in February. It followed an acquisition that we did of a company called Beam, which was a payment orchestration company. And we built the Beam, rebuilt the Beam technology into Modern Treasury, and we launched in February. And so it's been, 4 months or so. We just had our first $100 million TPV month on the PSP.
Congrats.
Thank you. We're very excited. We're seeing a lot of a breadth of use cases, which we're very excited about. And, as always happens in hypergrowth, when you start growing, you start, having a lot of feature requests that you have to go add. And so I'm sitting here very conscious of things that we need to go add to improve it. And at the same time, it's a very exciting time for us to be building this.
When you think about what you need to go add, what is that thing that keeps you up at night right now?
Well, it's really just the power that what we're trying to be is be the developer's best friend in making them not have to think about all the different payment rails and types of payments that exist in the financial system. And so, as an example, there are things on the fiat side, like being able to print and send and mail a paper check in the US.
Believe it or not,
And
people still want it.
People still want it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, on the other hand, you have folks who are focused on specific chain or specific coin that we need to go support on the stablecoin side. So I think what's really interesting is creating that interface that works with all of them. And so we're adding both ends of the spectrum, if you will. We're adding.
Yeah. Okay. So Dimitri, I want to ask you specifically when we're thinking through RTP, through stablecoins, I'm thinking through this the lens of like the 22-year-old developer, they're in college, maybe they're putting together some of their first payment flows. Like, do they need to lean on the side of, I need to be stablecoins, I just need to focus on that. RTP is going to get phased out. I need to learn both. Or, hey, if you're just focused on domestic, like RTP is all we need right now.
You know, it's a fascinating question. I think there's an embedded within it is a question of like, how do students today or developers who are kind of new to payments today, how do they actually learn about payments? We, from the get-go, built a lot of content. We pride ourselves in our API docs on making sure that we have a lot of helpful content, whether you use Modern Treasury or not, to understand how does ACH work, how does stablecoins work, how does RTP work. And more, I think that the reality is that people, you know, speak with ChatGPT, they speak with Claude, they ask it to go build something for them, they go try to test it. Now, because it's a financial product, there's still steps like KYB and others that force you to not entirely obfuscate away like all the actual technology. You have to be aware of what you're opening, where you're starting. But I do think that we're seeing more folks that they're going live faster, but in some cases they don't have the depth of understanding of the different payment rails. And so there's a role for us to actually help point out where something like RTP can actually help them, or something like stablecoins can help them in their businesses. But yeah, I think it's a brave new world. I think the way that the technology buyer interfaces with an API, you know, reference is just completely different now.
Yeah, I mean, we think about that a lot recently. Like, I even just asked this question when I'm going to Claude. I'm like, is it giving me the best answer? Like, if I ask it, who should I go to for payments? Is it going to give me the best answer? Or is it going to give me the person that's put together the best API documentation and content and discoverability?
You think about every company out there, like what they're thinking is, how do I get in there? How do I make the given model think of me first? And so I think you're seeing marketing start thinking about those types of questions because they're very relevant.
Yeah, and it feels similar in the sense of like the SEO blog phase on Google, but I think the step further is when you get to start actually interacting with these applications, and that time to just, like you said, go live is just getting compressed.
That's right.
When you
had a company go live in 4 days, like a couple months ago, which it's amazing for somebody to. I mean, it's effectively like building a full integration, adding support in a number of countries and a number of payment rails, go through KYB and go live. Like that's just not possible. I mean, you're seeing neobanks that are going global right away. You talk to teams that are like 10 people, and they're in 27 countries. And again, going back to even 3 years ago, that was completely impossible.
The rise of the vibe coded neobank is definitely, we talked about this last week. Have you seen neobank.build? Little free plug here. Go check it out. They kind of like, they're talking about just full stacks of a whole bunch of neobanks. But again, also covering teams that are just spinning up neobanks almost overnight. I want to go back to RTP because this really fascinates me, especially what you were talking about off camera with the HELOCs. Kind of walk us through that flow, because I'm also thinking that this is probably a really relevant use case. I mean, I imagine if the United States has an inundated mortgage, payment flows, how much worse is emerging markets here? And what would be the parallels of RTP for the US, stablecoins for, maybe a HELOC company in Brazil?
Well, places like Brazil, I think, actually have leapfrogged some of the technology that the US is stuck with. So I remember seeing somebody in Brazil using Pix for 2FA. So for authentication, instead of sending a text message, they were going to send you like 10 cents and 15 cents into your account. Wow. And it was going to get there instantly and more reliably and cheaper than a text message. And if you told somebody in the US that you have a payment rail that is more reliable, faster, cheaper, 24/7 and instant, relative to any a text message. Like, it's crazy, right? Like, we don't have payment. I mean, RTPs, but like, I think that really is something that other countries have leapfrogged. And I think that the part, there's reasons for it. Obviously, the US has been around for, the US payment systems have been around for a lot longer. There's 3,000, financial institutions. It's much more complicated. But at the same time, like, the US should get its act together.
Yeah.
And so I think we're starting to see that. And so something like HELOC, you brought that up, home equity line of credits. That's one of these products that sounds somewhat old school, if you will. But lots of money, travels over that. And when you actually are in the flow and you're actually trying to go to a HELOC company and you're effectively doing a bit of like a mortgage application, you're basically saying, here's what I want you to finance for me. At the end of that step, there's going to be a funding, you get approved, and then there's a funding moment. And in that funding moment, if you send funds over RTP and that shows up in your account right away, or over FedNow and it shows up in your account right away, from a customer psychology perspective, that's a hugely different experience, right? And so that, I think, is a really powerful thing. So I think when people, from the financial world think about instant payments, they get drawn to, like, you have more, you have better flexibility around, like, when do you want to place the actual fund distribution? You have, like, optimizing yield, all that stuff is true. But the actual user experience and who you're actually building this for matters a lot. And so I think that I think, to me, is one of these things that RTP kind of like jumps over into marketing and acquisition land. And if a HELOC company can say, we distribute funds right away, and our competitors take 20 minutes, you have to call a wire number, or they take, over a few days for the ACH to arrive, or what have you. That's, that's a reason to work with them. That's a reason to pick them.
We mentioned that I'm going to take you up on the offer to riff on this a little bit. We were talking about Figure, Chiave. You mentioned the acquisition. You mentioned that I didn't know you used to work for them as well. When we think about just these relevant use cases for industries that are ripe for disruption, like, how do you look through maybe not just HELOC, but real estate in general?
Real estate is a huge industry that is entirely paper-based today. And so whether it is the application itself, whether it's the capital markets kind of engine behind the scenes, securitizations, the paperwork around HELOCs or fund distributions or wire. I mean, the term wire room still exists, right? So I think that those opportunities to innovate are there. And I think that the technology is now also there to be able to do this. And, just riffing on this, one of the fascinating things that we work with a lot of title and escrow companies. And would it be amazing for international buyers to be able to fund, let's say an international buyer buys a house in the US, and for the down payment to be able to send that in over stablecoin directly to the escrow company that can receive it, move it into US dollars, and maybe send it to the seller of the house.
Seller, pay out commissions, pay off any debts, do everything you need to do to get the loan.
Stablecoin inbound cross-border payment for a buyer of a house solves so many problems, both for the buyer and for the escrow company that has to start calculating post FX. How do I make sure that you have this much money? How do I get it here by Tuesday at 2 p.m. when somebody's sitting in a conference room trying to close out the house sale? And so I just think that there's so many opportunities for this. And these are not the first industries to innovate. They're not like the earliest adopters, but I think they're starting to wake up to that.
I mean, even just, it's crazy to think, I mentioned how I used to work in the mortgage industry. People would not close their loans, on their closing date because you'd miss the wire cutoff. And it's like, man, RTP would have been nice, or, stable coins. And it's like, in 2020, 2021, you still don't send the wire time. Hey, did you get the wire? Hey, did you get the wire? It honestly blows my mind.
It's great to hear a lot about cash only buyers. Like, what does that mean? Like, how does that cash get where? Like, what is that?
They're coming in with the briefcase and just saying, here you go, buy the house. I actually don't even know. I'm just thinking, what would that process even look like? I don't think many lenders would, escrow companies would probably turn you away and say, no, I only take a cashier's check, or you can send me a wire. Otherwise, SOL.
We're working with some pretty forward-looking ones, but yeah, it's a change. And again, I think that going back to this conference, like the whole industry, I think is in this moment of convergence where the traditional companies are now realizing, partly because of the Genius Act and regulation allowing them to do it, and partly because the technology is actually matured enough and there's enough vendors that are sort of tested and serious and it's understood how it works. That all of a sudden you're seeing a lot of traditional banks, FIs, escrow companies, what have you, starting to do these things that 5 years ago they're oftentimes like not allowed to experiment with.
Yeah. Well, Dimitri, we're going to wrap here soon. The last question for you: you were here the first year of the conference. This is the second year of the conference. Pretty sure they're doing it again next year. Let's say we're back next year. What do you hope to see happen over the next, call it 365-ish days?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of conversation about the Clarity Act. So obviously, Genius happened since between the last one, this one. I think that that would be a huge unlock for a lot of use cases that today are not necessarily being made available for folks. But I think the thing that I would be most excited to see in a year from now is just a lot more companies that are not here today. I mean, there's a lot of companies here today that were not here last year. And I think that should continue. And hopefully more, like I said, more of the traditional companies that have now they're building up their pilots, they're building up their teams, they're kind of, turning the ship around towards this new and innovative thing. And so I think that seeing more of those at events like this is something that I'd expect, and I think will be.
Yeah, you want to go around and you see name tags where you see the company, and you're like, "Oh, I wasn't expecting that," or "I haven't heard of that company yet." Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, Dimitri, thanks for sitting down. This is going to wrap up our interviews. I'm probably done close to 20 here at a stablecoin conference in Mexico City. It's been a great week, Dimitri. I hope you have a great night. Safe travels back home. Tune in next week for more Stable Dash Live.